What's up, guys? So today on the podcast, we have James Smith. He is a Jiu-Jitsu purple belt at the time, but he is a really popular British personal trainer that does videos online related to health and fitness and wellness and stuff like that. And he has a pretty no-nonsense approach to it. For instance, a lot of people in the diet realm will be like, this is the only diet, is the holy grail of diet. Everybody should do this one diet and all of your problems will be solved. I mean, they act like this, right? And he'll obviously do a take on it and go, not really. Let's talk about that for a second.
In his funny British accent kind of way.
Yeah, and he's got a good sense of humor. He's very entertaining. And so after you listen to the podcast, if you like his stuff, definitely check him out. But we had chatted a couple times and I found his stuff entertaining. So I figured he would be a fun person to bring on the podcast. He definitely was. So hope you guys enjoy this episode today. Big thanks to our sponsor, Charlotte's Web. Charlotte's Web is the CBD that I personally use, and it's the CBD of my choice for a number of years now. I encourage you guys to try it. Again, there's a lot of really cool anti-inflammatory properties, which is really important related to training, really important related to a lot of health related stuff. And there's a lot of cool research that's beginning to come out on it. The waters have always been kind of murky with it because it's in that space of not being regulated, so it's a unregulated supplement. So that means like when you take a supplement, like when you get a CBD product, if it hasn't been third-party tested, there's no guarantee that what you're getting and there's actually what you're getting. And one of the things that's cool about the product is that like when we went to their farm back this past year, they were talking about all the stuff that they do to ensure that it's a good product, that it's a good plant, and to ensure that, what's in there is what the label says. And I think it's super important. And so again, if you guys want to check their stuff out, if you've never taken CBD, again, I encourage you to try it. It was a game changer for me personally, and a lot of people that end up using it, it's the same way for them. And so again, you can go to their website at charlottesweb.com. The promo code is new. If you guys have been following the podcast for a while, it's Jujitsu 20. So it's 20% off on the order. And again, I encourage you to try it for about a month, just to see what the effects are, just to see what you feel, because everybody's system's a little bit differently. And so I encourage people to try stuff out and see what they think. Just like how we talk about on this podcast, talk about diet and things like that, and training and everything else. When it comes to diet, there really is no such thing as like the one diet that's going to work for everybody. It comes down to your personal preferences and everything else. And so you have to find the diet that works best for you. And everybody's different as far as their response to supplements and medications and things like that. And so you have to find the one that works best for you. And so again, I encourage people to try it because CBD has been really, really impactful to my training, my overall well-being, and everything. And so again, check it out. Use the promo code Jujitsu20 and save 20% off in the order. Also, thanks to our sponsor, Epic Roll. EpicRollBJJ.com is the website. If you guys are in the market for Jiu-Jitsu gear, shorts, rash guards, gis, anything like that, t-shirts, joggers, gym bags, fanny packs, hats, anything Jiu-Jitsu related, Matt's got it there, and he's got cool designs to go with it, and all of it comes with it's a quality product. And you can check him out at epicrollbjj.com. The promo code is Jujitsu. You can save 15% off the order. And also thanks to our sponsor, Manscaped. Manscaped is the premier men's below the belt grooming company. They also have products that are above the belt. But again, they're focused mainly on grooming your manly areas from your beard down to your nether region. You can say balls if you want to.
Nethers.
And again, you can check them out if you go to their website at manscaped.com. The promo code is Jiu-Jitsu20. You'll save 20% on the order, and you get free shipping. It's a good deal. Again, I've tested all their stuff. So I don't want to say all their stuff, but I've tested a good deal of their stuff before they actually became a sponsor. I was like, let me try your trimmer. I want to make sure it's not a piece of junk. And from the actual packaging itself, which is really nice, to the actual product itself, everything's high quality. And so again, whether it's for you or a man in your life, it's definitely a cool place to grab some good stuff that you can use. And guys, if you want to support the podcast directly, you can do so by going to patreon.com/the Jiu-Jitsu podcast. By doing so, you'll get access to a very inexpensive membership that supports the podcast every month, that brings these episodes to you. And along with that, you'll get access to content that gets updated regularly and goes back for years, literally years, on the podcast with people that we've had on the guests that we've had on the podcast. Sometimes they're just episodes with Eugene and I, and sometimes they're actionable tips with jiu-jitsu practitioners and other people from different spaces. Because again, we've had a lot of people on here, everything from physical trainers and things like that to doctors who are experts at making people's backs work better. And so you can get access to that content. And along with that, we have some videos in there and some other extras that you can get access to. And we have a live green room that we do once a month that if you want to join into, you'll get access to that. And that live green room is basically a chance for you to hang out with Eugene and I before the podcast and just chat. Simple as that. If you ever wanted to sort of hang out, but maybe you can't make your way to Louisville, Kentucky to train with us, it's something you can do. So check that out at patreon.com/the Jiu-Jitsu podcast. And guys, if you'd like to join my True Crew email list, you can do so by going to jujitsu.net/join, JOIN. And by doing so, you'll get access to my daily email that I send out. Well, daily, because that's the implied idea of a daily email. And along with it, you'll get access to 3 free ebooks. One is on drilling, one is on building a game plan for your jiu-jitsu, and the last one is on some at-home study tips, as well as some at-home workouts that you can try. I originally made that ebook during the beginning of the lockdowns for people. And so now it's a chance where if maybe you're dealing with lockdowns, maybe you're injured, or maybe you just want to maximize your training, you can do so a little bit at home, and it gives you some ideas on how to do that. So you can check that out at jujitsu.net/join. And guys, with that said, let's jump into the podcast.
I nearly just messages my friends going, when's this guy going to come out as a parody?
Oh man, he's so good, dude. I mean, he's a walking parody. He like talks about himself in third person, and he's always like, it's like he's operating a walkie-talkie. He's like, Liver King here, and at the end of it, it'll be Liver King out.
We're just hitting the ground running.
You don't have to do that.
Oh my god, dude!
I saw somewhere that someone did the maths on his Amazon stats, and he's doing $4 million a month in supplements.
Wow.
What is he selling? Raw
yeah, it's like capsules of stuff.
Yeah, so it's pretty much like liver extracts. And do you know what? Like, I get the hypothesis. I feel like he's read a book on the nutritional properties of organ meats and how predators in the wild go for the organs first, and humans are only eating, muscles that only create locomotion or whatever. And then he's like, right, how can I turn this into a brand? But the funniest bit was last night I saw the video where he claims he's natural, and there's syringes sticking into the food. These are the exact syringes you would use to inject steroids, and he's even got the blue tips. So I've been on cycle when I was younger. When I started out as a PT, you draw back with the green tips, and then you go in with the blue because you need a different thickness of needle to draw the vial of test.
It draws faster.
Yeah, it's like a thick liquid, and then you need the blues to inject, and you always want to have more blues than greens because if you run out of blues and you have to inject with a green, it hurts a lot. So I was like, mate, isn't it convenient that out of all props that you could ever use in a video, it just so happens to be the exact thing that you're trying to say you're not?
Well, that was like, there was a bodybuilder back then. I forgot which one. One of my buddies was talking about it, where he was talking about how he was natural and he was going through his diet. He opens up the fridge and there was just like insulin everywhere. You're like, and this, it's like, dude, come on. Like, I mean, come on. It's just like, the guy's jacked as can be, and obviously took a lot of hard work and everything else, but it's like, you didn't look that way just from eating beef testicles.
And there's a likability character that you can have. Like, I had Mark Bell on the podcast.
Yeah.
He's open about it as part of his identity, and I don't take anything away from him because I know he's taking testosterone. I'm not like, I'm not going to listen to anything you say because I know that you're on testosterone. And if Liver King was like, I like the juice, but I'm also an ancestral motherfucker, I'd be like, okay, I get it.
Right.
Is there any, like, from your opinion, is there any, like, is there any advantage to doing the raw meat stuff?
I think there is. And I think that, for me personally, I don't eat any like organs. I think that I'm set in my ways now. And if I try and eat foods that I don't really like, I'm 32 now. I try something, even like a type of fish I've never had, I'm like, nah, I'll take me back to what I'm used to. So with that in mind, it's I think there are benefits, but there'd probably also be benefits if I didn't train jiu-jitsu twice in a day. I wouldn't be so sore the next day. But like it's one of those things where I'm not there proclaiming. I think that my job really is to make people's lives a little bit better, not the best, because if I made people's lives the best, I would actually be making their lives worse.
Well, how do you mean?
Because imagine you have like a spectrum, one being the worst you could treat yourself, like, junk food every day, don't sleep enough, don't get any sunlight, and 10 being the absolute best. If I put someone at 10 with chicken, broccoli, You know,
Mm.
it becomes like counterintuitive. It's even when people eat for longevity, suddenly they're not even eating foods they enjoy. They're not, you know, suddenly I like eating, you know, junk food every now and then, like having desserts. I like
Yeah.
having sweets or whatever, obviously in moderation, but I think that's the balance that you need. I like to have a night out once in a while. You know, I've got tickets for Coachella next year. If I go for 4 days, I'm going to be a write-off. I'm going to be doing things that I shouldn't be doing. And then if I pop my clogs, if I die at, you know, 75, and someone goes, "Oh, you could have lived for another 15 years," I'm like, "Have you 15 years?" You know, this isn't a competition. See who can be the healthiest to live the longest. It's about getting the balance between enjoying yourself and looking after yourself.
We had that conversation too about like, do you want to live, like we were talking about somebody that maybe is low testosterone levels and like, you know, taking testosterone supplementation or injections, and just kind of like, well, there's effects of having low testosterone, which are, you know, indicative that could affect your health. And
Like talking about like older guys.
Yeah, like older guys. They were talking about somebody maybe that's like in their 40s that they're maybe training jujitsu and their testosterone is lower, or they're fatiguing quicker, you know. But we talked about like, do you want to live, you know, a long life, or do you want to have like really good high quality years? Maybe like you said, 75 years, and then you don't live till 90, but the like last 15 years would be horrible. You know, it'd be just a decline and physically just terrible.
Yeah, 100%. Because for myself, I only got into jiu-jitsu at 28. So I feel like I was a late adapter into it. So I was thinking, okay, I'm probably going to be 38 or maybe 40 when I get my black belt. But I want to have some fun then. I don't want to be like slipping off the edge there. I want to compete a lot. I want to recover. And if I've had kids at this point, I 100% will be considering testosterone replacement therapy. And also, between the ages of me being 50, 60, and maybe 70, I want to be active and a little bit jacked. And even if it shaves years off my later life, I want to be the active jacked dad with my kids when they're teenagers, when they're in their 20s. Because when they're in their 30s, 40s, and 50s, it's okay if I have a heart attack and die. And I was there, you know, tackling them in the back garden or teaching them how to suplex properly. So, yeah, and I think that people should see life like that. You're most influential as a parent in the first 20 years. So, yeah, if you could be a stronger, better role model, because it's a two-way thing. You give someone a bit of test, they feel more inclined to train. And then when they do train, they get a good result. They feel more inclined to eat well to support the training. And there's this like full circle that you get from people. But having low testosterone kind of nips in the bud. You don't feel like training, so you don't feel like eating well, so you don't feel like turning up and all of this stuff. So I do think it's a slight ethical debate, but I think it's something that people definitely need to consider as they get older.
Yeah, it's a medication that should be used like in certain contexts. Like you said, like it's, you know, if you're like 17 years old and you have no medical issues or whatever, but you want to be jacked like some guy you see in a magazine, you shouldn't be on it. Like you should like that. There's a while before you need to kind of go into that particular realm. But you know, it's even like jujitsu sometimes, because I get like messages from people that are in these situations where maybe they have a small injury, and you know, they're like questioning whether they should even come back to training. And obviously everybody has to make that call for themselves, but I always kind of remind them like, look, man, you don't get to keep this thing that you call a body forever. Like, you know, you're going to rust out or wear out one way or the other. It's on, you know, it's here for a limited time, so you might as well have some fun with it while you have it.
Yeah, I think that it's a tough one, because people, when I first took anabolic steroids, it was because I had an insecurity in place. It was that I wouldn't be taken seriously as a personal trainer unless I was bigger and stronger and more jacked. Then adding to that insecurity by taking anabolic steroids, it didn't make it go away. It just meant I was having the same issues, but at a bigger size, lifting bigger weights. And then when I had to come off after 12 weeks, I was like, well, I haven't actually fixed anything. I've just put a bit of fuel on the fire and actually ruined training natural. And for me, it was for a couple of years CrossFit that I used to take the piss out of it all the time, and I got into it. And it was a competitive environment. I played rugby for 15 years. It was good to throw all my competitiveness into something like that. Then 2 years later, I found Jiu-Jitsu. And Jiu-Jitsu, this is why I think I'm such a big proponent of the sport, because suddenly me putting on a bit of weight, or me going through cycles of liking training and not liking training, didn't influence how I felt about myself, because I'd pull off a submission for the first time, or I'd learn a different takedown that I was nailing every time at training. And suddenly my identity was more with what I could do rather than how I looked. And that's why I think so many of us are such big advocates of the sport, because it quite literally eradicated an insecurity that was pushing me down the road of taking drugs to try and improve myself.
What did you do initially? Like, once you got off of the steroids, like, how did you overcome that whole process of like your self-image, like being okay with, you know, not being the most jacked personal trainer? How did you kind of overcome that?
So at the end of the cycle, you say to yourself, I'm not going to do this again. That was the last time. And then you have this 2-week lull period where no matter how hard you're training, how well you're sleeping, recovering, you're getting weaker and smaller. And people even say stuff. They're like, oh, you know, you've lost a bit of size. Oh, you've lost weight. Like, that's not what I want to hear.
Right.
And then you're taking a load of drugs at the same time. I was taking like tamoxifen, which is a breast cancer drug. I take
Novodex and Clomid and all that stuff. Yeah.
I was like, you know, rattling in the morning. So I was taking this stuff. I'm pretty sure I was living with my parents as well. So I'm hiding all this stuff in my bedroom. And then, yeah, you come off. And then within about 3-4 weeks, you're thinking, oh, I could do that just one more time. And it becomes this cycle of kind of in and out. But then there's no real happy ending. It's really, I realized at some point, I'm going to be doing this forever if I don't jump off of this, because I'm never going to get to a size and be like, yeah, perfect. If you think about, if I took 10 of the last Olympia winners and said, hey, did you 100% love your body when you competed? None of them would have been happy.
It's crazy to think.
Well, it's interesting because that's the reason why I started doing them. I did a couple cycles when I was younger, in my early 20s, for the same reason. When I grew up, I got really chunky and fat, for some different reasons. And then I also had a touch of gyno from puberty. And, you know, nobody really knew what it was back then. It was just like, I just looked different. And I remember I was like, okay, I'm going to do the cycle. I'm going to get so jacked and big that like, it'll just, whatever, it'll fix the problems. And I remember like, you know, swelled up, got bigger. And then same thing. It was like, once you're off of it, you come, eventually you realize like, using this stuff isn't going to change how I feel about myself, you know, and then you've got to fill that hole, that void somewhere else, not from using a supplement. You can use them, it's fine, but that's not going to make you love yourself. That's not going to make you look in the mirror and say, I actually like looking at this person. That's stuff that has to come from a lot of deep work in other areas.
Also, playing rugby, I now only look back and realize that rugby is really a running sport. And you don't miss tackles because you forget in the middle of the game. You miss tackles because you're tired. And you get tired because, you know, the amount of running you have to do across pitch. And then I realized I use the guise of, oh, if I go on steroids, I'll become better at rugby. But not when I'm training bodybuilder flipping splits 5 times a week. So I'd put on like 7-8 kilograms. Then I'd be slow around the field and I'd be blowing. Then I'd be picking up niggles from the fact that my muscles were getting stronger than my joints could keep up with. I was like, James, you're undoing, you know, and I would turn up to the pub to meet my mates and, you know, I'd be like, yeah, I'm not drinking. They'd be like, you're on steroids. And I was like, what? They were like, you're visibly bigger and you're not drinking, you're on steroids. And then I'd get banned from the rugby bus. We'd be away. And even if I was drinking, you know, they'd be like, oh, you're on steroids. I'd be like, I'm not. And then they'd be like, you're on steroids. I'd be like, I'm not. They're on steroids. I'd be like, we shut the fuck up. They're like, hey, void rage. And I'd be like, oh. Like, it ruined, it made me worse at rugby, which I couldn't afford to be worse with. And then, yeah, I was just getting bigger. And the last cycle I did, I didn't feel healthy. And I was holding water in my face. My blood pressure got really bad. And for some reason, I'll have to talk to more plates, more dates. But if I went in the sun for 5 minutes, I'd go red, no matter how much sun cream I put on. And
really,
in all my videos, people were just commenting like, why are you red? And it was either my blood pressure or something to do with it. And then when I came off steroids, everyone was like, you look so healthy. And I was like, yeah, I'm not doing this again.
Yeah, it's weird.
Did you play rugby professionally?
Not professionally. And do you know what? It's probably the best thing that ever happened to me. If I was 25% better at rugby, I would never have got on in my life in my early 20s. When I was like 22, 23, I was like, I'm going to have to get a real job and rugby is going to have to be a hobby. Whereas a lot of my friends that got signed for local sides, they were like, this is my life. And even in the league beneath Premiership, the championship we have in the UK, I think like maybe less than 5% will ever get picked for the Prem. And even then, you're looking at probably salaries, I'm trying to think, maybe in 25, 30,000 US dollars a year to go full time to play rugby. And they do that waiting for a break. But then before they know it, they're 31, 32. They've got no experience working in like the what I would consider the real world, because they were waiting for like a gust of wind to come along and propel them into the international sphere of playing. It's probably similar with something in American football in the States.
Mm-hmm.
Then you see your friends who like at college were the best athletes, but they never quite made it. And if you're not quite in that top echelon, there's not much of a career opportunity for you. And I'm so glad that I let go of that ambition to play at a high level and became a personal trainer at 24. Because if I hadn't, I'd probably have gone down a completely different path.
What was that realization like for you? Was that like a lot of disappointment? What did you learn from it? How did you kind of let go of that and move on in another direction?
So I went to a rugby college in the UK called Hartbury College. And technically it's a campus of a main uni in Bristol, but the campus was the best rugby team in the whole of the country. So as a campus, we would go to other fully fledged universities and beat them. And our third team would go and beat most universities. So when I started off, they were like, you're going to have to trial for the third team. And I was like, third team, played for County back home, played for Berkshire. The trials were flipping difficult. So I was like, wow, this is a high level college. And then even just playing threes, I was like, this is some of the high standard I've played at. And then after being immersed into what really was a high level, and then going to a club that was in one beneath the championship, I was like, I'm not good enough. I'm not as good as I thought. And it wasn't a bad realization. At that point, I was like, okay, if I want to play first team, I'm going to have to go down 3 leagues. So I went down 3 leagues, amateur rugby, no one's getting paid. And I was like, wow, actually, this is fun. I like this. We got hobbyists, similar to Jiu-Jitsu. I'm sure if people go from the blue basement or with the DDS, and then they go down to a normal Jiu-Jitsu gym, suddenly they're like, wow, this is a lot more fun. It's a lot less intimidating. There's a lot less eggshells to walk on. So for me, understanding that I wasn't good enough was one of the best things ever. But I only found that out by putting myself in the deep end and really going for it, and then realizing I don't have what it takes. And part of that was also that I like to go out and party. And it never crossed my mind once when I was younger that I might have to give that up to be better. And that just seemed like a deal I wasn't willing to do.
Well, man, in like rugby, I feel like, what is the average sort of career span for a rugby player?
Probably, I'd say
Pretty short, isn't it?
you're probably going to maybe get into your early 30s. So if you get into an international squad, you're looking at maybe 10, 15 years. But then you're going to have injuries and setbacks. And the season in the UK, or the season for most teams, is like maybe 8-9 months. I could be wrong with that, but they have a short off season. But in Japan's now the highest paying place in the world for rugby. And I think they only play or they might get 5 months off.
Really?
So some of the international rugby players now that play in England are being sent to Japan to have a couple years off or a year off. So they have a short season. They earn good enough money to buy homes for their families and set themselves up for the future. But then they're going to come back into the England squad before the next World Cup. So it's an interesting dynamic that for longevity, some people are going overseas and earning good money. And it's crazy. A lot of New Zealand players, a lot of Australian players, they head over there because it's a little bit closer. But for the UK, if they go over, they're not eligible to play international anymore. So it's quite like a political thing. But yeah, all you ever are is like one injury away from retirement. So the one thing for Americans, when they're like, oh my God, that's crazy. You're a little bit more conservative in tackles because you haven't got helmets and shoulder pads. And we rugby players look at American football and go, you guys are crazy.
Yeah, because we take in American football, we like layer the dude up in armor basically, and then just let them just go full tilt, and they'll just collide into people, and essentially they have car wrecks every rip, every time that they're running into each other.
Yeah, I don't know.
And they're also massive, like like American. Rugby players obviously have to run a lot. Like American football players, like they have to run in certain positions. But then you look at some of the size. Some of these guys, as they run for 20 yards or something, and that's it. They don't have to have that long endurance, and so they can be much bigger, just like big humans. And then they just run that 20 yards through and just charge into someone.
Yes, crazy.
Yeah, I think you can't be. And correct me if I'm wrong. I don't think you can be as big in rugby. You can't. I mean, because it's like you said, it's more like cardiovascular, a lot of continuous running. There's not, I guess, dead balls. Like it's not like, you will like reset at times if there's a score, but like it's continuous play, back and forth.
And you never know where we kind of have body types for different positions where you need some people that can scrummage, pushing that little pile of bodies that pushing against each other. So you have the stocky guys with no neck, and those guys are imperative to be able to push in the scrum. But then if they're caught out in the outfield, there could be a time they're on the wing just through sheer luck. And then the other team will be shouting mismatch. And I've had that shouted before. I'm like, oh, you cheeky bastards, don't shout mismatch. You know, they've seen a big guy on the wing. They're like, let's run at him. But American football, you just had the Super Bowl a few days ago.
Yeah.
It's such a crazy, like, the sport, the fans love it, the big hits. But like you say about the car wrecks as well, you know, even in rugby, we're concerned about concussions and head impact. And even though they protect all of their joints, there's still brain, a ball of jelly inside a skull that's going to be, you know, hugely, you know, someone can get a concussion so easy that way. In rugby, I feel like we probably have a few less. There was a season where they put little sensors on the players so they could tell if they got concussed or not. So I think it was behind the ear, or it might have even been, I think it was behind the ear. So then the sideline would know straight away if a player had been exposed to the G-force that would be indicative of a concussion.
Interesting.
Well, you tackle different. Obviously, you can't go ahead, and you're not allowed to go ahead. You're not allowed to use your helmet, I don't think.
Well, you're not supposed to, but they still collide.
But yeah, like I think you guys will tackle very differently. I mean, I don't know. Even going in with the shoulder, like a heavy shoulder tackle, you could dislocate your shoulder or tear something.
Yeah, we have to wrap the arm. If you don't make an attempt to wrap the arm, that's a penalty. If you go above the shoulder, that could be a red card.
It's like a head, I gotcha.
You're not allowed to dive at the legs too much. So there was a period where people would just dive in with no arms below the knee line, but then there were leg breaks coming out from every game. So every year it comes out and it's all about player safety. And again, there's a few of my friends that have played at a high level. They've got injuries, and I try and tell them that Jiu-Jitsu is a good progression for them. And they're like, nah, you guys are crazy. And it's one of the only sports you can actually not hide an injury, but you can work around it.
Sure.
And if my shoulder's a bit fucked at any point, I'll just tap early to Kimuras. I'll tap early to Americanas, and I'll just let my training partner know. And so many athletes that are, you build a kind of pedigree of attitude from playing competitive sport for so many years. I think some people quite literally slowly go insane when they're in their 30s and 40s. And I think it's such a good kind of avenue for them to manage that by getting into something like jiu-jitsu.
Yeah, and also I think that for a lot of us that played sports, especially team sports, and even singular sports like wrestling and stuff like that, and I have guys that were in the military that are at our gym, and a lot of people will say that, you know, the training and stuff like that, it gives them a chance to be competitive again and access that side of themselves, but also the camaraderie that exists. Like, you know, you walk in and everybody's, you know, bullshitting with each other and kind of, you know, cutting up and things like that. I mean, every gym's a little different. Some are more traditional than others, but like at ours, at least, you know, you walk in and everybody's ragging on you, like, you know, like you would if you were playing in a team sport. You walk into the locker room and someone starts giving you shit about something. That environment exists. And I think a lot of us, when we lose the sports that we used to do, we lose that environment in some cases. And I think that it's a nice thing to have, because, like, you know, in a day-to-day corporate environment or work environment, you know, you have to be careful with the way you speak. You have to do all these things. Whereas when you're around your buddies, you can just kind of let loose and you have that camaraderie there.
It's interesting. I saw something not too long ago about how Starbucks used to market themselves not as a coffee shop, but as the third place.
Yeah.
So they were like, you got your home, you got your work, you got your third place. And I love that now jiu-jitsu, for a lot of people, that also becomes their third place. And it's such a crazy environment. And I know exactly what you mean. If someone's belt's quite faded, I'm like, oh, he's had that in the wash trying to look harder. You know, he's been doing that or someone gets a stripe, I'll be like, oh, Ferris has been promoting himself again. Or, you know, and just bantering. And I'll be sat around some black belts. I'll be like, yeah, ever since I gave myself a purple belt, I've really just been able to relax more. Or, you know, you're just winding people up at every opportunity. And that's essential. And also to have an environment as well where I think that for a lot of high flying corporates, where when you earn good money, suddenly things are all available to you and you get easy access to things. And for a lot of people, it becomes drugs and alcohol and women in the onset for a lot of men. And they don't quite get the humility, because then they start surrounding themselves by yes men. Sure. And whatever they say, oh yeah. But when you have a jiu-jitsu gym, you get the shit kicked out of you, you know, often. Because I was saying this the other day about even people like Conor McGregor at the moment. Like, I'm a big fan of what he's accomplished for the sport.
Mhm.
But I feel like no one in his environment is kind of putting him down or putting him in place. And
Mhm.
where you see some celebrities need to become religious, like Justin Bieber, mad religious now, it's because they don't have black belts whipping them into shape now and then. That's what my belief is. So I think that for a lot of high achievers, having the humility of higher belts and people that can literally put you in your place 3 nights a week, I think is invaluable.
Why did you start jiu-jitsu? What was like the pull to you? You said it started 28 and you're 32 now. So about 4 years you've been training.
Yeah.
Tell me about what kind of drew you in. What made you think like, I want to do that?
So funnily enough, the last guy I did the steroid cycle with was a bodybuilder, and he's a big guy. He's probably 10, 15 kilograms bigger than me. And we were fucking around on a beach and we were having a bit of a wrestle. And in the end, as he tackled me, I ended up I put him in my closed guard, and I had nothing. I didn't know. I actually felt quite powerless. I had 110. I'm pissing about with a mate, but I've got 110 kilogram guy on top of me. And I thought, I have no idea what I could do to beat you right now. And it sounds really weird. I remember it's Freshwater Beach in Sydney. And I thought to myself, we like just stop pissing about then. But I didn't like the feeling in my head that I didn't have anything I could do. So I was like, right, I'm going to inquire into Jiu-Jitsu gym. Now, I knew what it was because when I was 23, I went to some no-gi sessions in a gym near where I live. And we learned triangles. And it's all we did for the whole session. Didn't do any sparring because I was very new to it. And that weekend, I went out and I got pissed. I had a party and some of my mates came back and we ended up having like a play fight in my house. And I put my friend in a triangle and I put him to sleep. I shit you not, I thought I'd killed him.
Oh yeah,
And,
yeah.
And so imagine this, it's at my parents' house. I come back, I put my friend to sleep. My sister sees it. She screams. My parents get out of bed wearing dressing gowns, coming through. My sister's got a wet flannel in his face, trying to wake him up. My sister shouts to my parents, James killed Rob. And after that, I was like, I can't learn these dark arts. And it took me 4 years later before I went back and I was like, no, I'm fine. It was one incident. If anything, you know, I've not got a bad temperament. I've probably been punched in the face twice in my life. I'd never start fights or anything like that. And I was like, no, I want to do this. So next time I'm on the beach in Sydney and I'm wrestling a guy bigger than me, I'll have some options. And as soon as I started going, because I was a big rugby guy, I'm about 95 kilograms. I not only had a target on my back, I was not only one of the spazzy white belts who I broke a guy's nose in my first session when he took my back because I panicked. I ended up going to a gym where I had a sociopath of a black belt. So every time someone pinned me, I would roll away from them, not into them, and they'd choke me out. And if my training partners tried telling me that I was making a mistake, the black belt would go, don't teach him that. You're not the black belt. So then he put me in a position with the higher belts where he wouldn't let them teach me what I was doing wrong. I asked him if I could pay him for privates. He said, nah, just keep coming to the sessions. So for my first 6 months, I was just fighting for my life, learning a Kimura from side control, but not how. It took me 2-3 weeks to realize I had to turn into my opponent, not out. So I had a real baptism of fire getting into it. And I remember leaving training, shaking, my blood sugar being so low that I'd feel ill. I remember walking across the road straight away, needing a Powerade. No one ever told me I was going too hard. I remember how much my arms would be screaming from even holding people on top of me when people were passing my guard. And probably 3-6 months in, I went to Bali. I left Australia and I went to an MMA gym there. So I was a white belt with no stripes. And there were some Brazilian instructors who would make us do like very fun things. If we got anything wrong, he'd be like, am I speaking Russian? Do you not understand? My grandma can do this. Yeah. And it was really fun, like touristic environment. And I realized we were progressing a lot more there. We were learning funny sweeps, funny arm bars. Like literally we'd learn bullshit and then we'd go into rolling and everyone there was so much nicer. And they were like, oh, no, don't put your hand here. Don't put your arm there. So at that point, as like a 1-year white belt, I was hooked and I was into it from then. And I would like to, I'm a very curious person. I wake up some days and I'm like, oh, I need to YouTube something. Oh, I haven't done a north-south choke in a year. I'm going to go watch a Marcelo Garcia video about it. And then I'm like, hold on. I will see Lachlan Giles putting on a heel hook and I'll be like, that looks different to Craig Jones. And then I'll go down a rabbit hole of why those things are different. So yeah, I got into it because of that. been training 4 years. I've been fortunate enough to train in loads of gyms now. And yeah, it was an interesting start to jiu-jitsu, but weirdly, I wouldn't swap it for anything else because nothing feels quite as difficult now. Even rolling with Hodger Gracie wasn't probably as painful as those first sessions versus the purple belts as a white belt.
Now, when you came back from that vacation, did you stick around with that same coach, or did you decide I'm going to find a different gym that's a little bit more relaxed?
So I had to leave Australia because of a visa issue. So I was in Bali for
Yeah.
3 months, then I was in London for another 6.
Okay.
So by this point, I came back as a 4-stripe white belt. I went back to that gym and I got my blue belt with that instructor.
Okay.
And then there was a few things where I was like, it gave me the ick a bit. And then I went to another gym and I said to the instructor openly, I was like, look, I would have been a member of both gyms, but I needed purple belts that were my weight category because when I went to competition, I was getting fucked. And we didn't do stand-up in this gym as well. So when I went to competition, I was getting fucked. And I was saying to people, I remember saying to someone going, I probably shouldn't have got my blue belt without any stand-up. I couldn't name 3 takedowns in gi or no gi at this point. So I was then a blue belt who was thinking I've got this too early. So I went to another gym that did have purple belts in my category and the culture was a lot better. And also there was a lot more people to beat me up. And when I got there, I realized, and that's the same gym I'm at now. Yeah, that was crucial for me because the one before was very rough and ready. It was very much like, let's do a technique for 10 minutes and then let's get into it. And although I like that now as a purple belt, I'm like, oh, can we roll yet? But when I was there at that point, there were no fundamentals classes. There was no like GB1 as Gracie Barr, I call it, or whatever. So yeah, it was time for me to go. I had to leave that gym and a few people came with me.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny that you kind of, I wonder why didn't they show you anything? Like, I'm curious, is there a reason why they didn't want you to like progress? Or
I think he was wanting me to figure it out so that, you know, he's trying to almost like a tough love, almost like, okay, if I put you in the struggle, you'll have to adapt to it. You'll have to learn, you'll have to go away. And also I think I was just good cannon fodder. Like now when I see like a rugby player at 95 kg walk in overconfident, I see myself 4 years ago.
Yeah.
I'm thinking, oh, this will be fun. There's nothing better clutching on the back of a big guy who's kicking their way out, knowing that they're just going to walk into any trap you set them. So yeah, to this day, not quite sure. And when I said to him, I was like, oh, I'm going to go to another gym. I just got blocked and deleted on everything. I used to walk his dog. And then I was like, yeah. So, and it's one of those things where it's so important to have a community and environment in that gym that is supportive. Now we play music, people are like throwing shade at each other. There wasn't really any of that before. There was no banter. And it's such an important part of training. Like you say, if people aren't giving each other stick or winding each other up, then yeah, it doesn't feel like a place I want to be spending for my 3rd place.
Yeah, because I think for me, like I remember being younger and taking things like what I would consider too seriously when I was training younger. And I remember it would get in the way because then you're kind of hamstrung by this desire to, I have to do good, right? Or I have to do well at this thing. And then as I got older, and, you know, I think this also had to do with security issues in my own self, as I really became like, I guess you would consider like almost optimistic about the outcome, but with no expectation. Like you're going to give it all you got, but you don't really give a shit what happens. Like then it was like all of a sudden I got a lot better. I competed better. And I also had more fun with training. And I think that, and then that's the environment that we wanted to create at the gym is like, I want you to come in and I want you to train hard, but I want you to have fun doing it because it's even like they've even done studies where people, if they're in a somewhat relaxed state, they're able to absorb information better than they're in a ultra heightened state. And we can just think about this, like when you compete and you brain fart, you're in this incredibly like heightened arousal state and you forget about stuff that you should know. Like the guy's literally on his side with his arm dangling in front of you and you can't remember to armbar. Whereas if you're in like a more relaxed state, you're able to bridge the gap between connections of information easier than if you're too like wound up.
I think I can relate to that massively. And one environment that I really enjoyed training at was B Team in Austin, where I met Brandon Reed, one of your big boys. And when I got there, I was like, what's it going to be like? And no warm-ups, bring it in. This is the technique, you know, and you got like Craig Jones, Nicky Rod, Nicky Ryan, you know, all these big guys around. They're not intimidating. Craig's out and out on the side of the mat, tapping people with bullshit. People are laughing, people are having fun. When you're having a roll, no one's taking it too seriously. And my ability to absorb knowledge was so fast, probably because of the level of where it was at, but it wasn't intimidating. I wasn't nervous. I wasn't nervous about making a mistake. I think that's why I think no-gi can be a lot more enjoyable, because the repercussions of mistakes aren't so severe in no-gi. So I feel that for me personally, because I feel that's a more relaxed environment, whereas sometimes with gi, you let someone pass, we don't let anyone pass your guard. Sometimes when you hit purple belt, you're like, if someone passes, they'll think I'll let him. But then when someone pins you to the mat by your gi, you're like, oh God, this is shit. They start getting the cross faces with the sleeves. But yeah, so I think you're completely right. When it's relaxed and it's an environment and people are kind of laid back, it makes for such better learning.
Why'd you head out there? Were you just in the country, just like visiting? Like, why'd you choose that gym?
So I was locked out of Australia for 8 months. So I've had 15 visas in Australia since I got here. And so I came here, first of all, 4 years ago. I've got a business here. I pay tax here. I employ Australians, but I'm still not eligible for a visa here. So I'm not on a skilled working list. Self-employed, they abolished the route to self-sponsor because everyone was just coming here, making up a business and living here. So have you been to Australia?
No.
It's an amazing place. It really is. The work-life balance is amazing, and you got beaches. I've just been for a swim in the sea this morning before coming on here, but because of that, the borders here are very tight. So even recently, I had to go offshore, and because of the pandemic, up until only 6 months ago, it was 2 weeks in a hotel to enter Australia.
Yeah.
So that was nearly for 2 years. The Olympians that came back from Tokyo Olympics had to do 2 weeks quarantine in New South Wales, then another 2 weeks to get back into their home states. So some Olympians did 28 days in a hotel on arrival. So I was in the UK, I was locked out. And while I was there, I was like, look, I want to be somewhere that's not here. I want to go travel. I want to see the world. So I trained in Roger Gracie headquarters in London, which is a fantastic gym. I really liked it. But the other 22 hours of the day was a bit mundane, a bit gray and a bit rainy. So I went to Dubai for 2 weeks because I wasn't allowed into America if I'd been in Europe for 2 weeks. So I had to stay in Dubai for 2 weeks. I went there and trained an MMA gym. Then I fly into Texas. Never been to Texas before. And Isaac Michelle, who's one of the guys in the B team over there, he was one of the instructors at my gym here in Sydney during the pandemic. And he beat the shit out of me so bad that I was like, right, meet me here tomorrow. Tell me how much I need to pay you an hour. Let's do some privates. And he'd wiped the floor with us. He won brown belt worlds at I think it was under 77 kilograms after having his brown belt for like 2 or 3 weeks. So he was technically a purple belt competing here in Sydney, and he was beating black belts most weekends in little competitions. So I went over, I was like, I'll come see you, I'll come see the boys because I've been following them for a while. And yeah, so I put myself in Austin, and everyone's been hyping up Austin. Rogan, Lex Friedman, Huberman, Elon Musk, all of these people. I was like, I want to see what the hype is. I get to Texas. It's a fun place. It's a very fun place. But and training with those guys, I was like, I just want to be able to say that I've trained with them and I've gone over there and I like the kind of culture. So that was where I wanted to go. There was always this talk during the pandemic. Oh, we'll go to Puerto Rico. We'll train with the DDS, like how cool that would be. But there was never like an invitation. There was never a way, like, you know, you couldn't just turn up and do open mat. You kind of would have had to have needed someone. It was kind of like a click. And then when the B team opened and they were like, yeah, guys, come in, $50 for a drop in, whatever. I was like, wow, I can actually go train with these people. And what sport can you go train with the David Beckhams of football, or, you know, the Cristiano Ronaldos, which I truly, honestly believe that that's almost the case. I mean, you know, Tom Brady's not going to be doing a throwing American football course. You know, hey guys, right, $75 drop in, come in and just do a little meet and greet. So yeah, it was a great experience going over there.
How'd you enjoy being in America? Like, what was that like for you? Was it the first time?
No, I've been over there a few times before.
Okay.
In 2019, I went to Coachella with 3 girls I'd never met before. So on my Instagram stories, I got asked if, you know, we've got a spare ticket to Coachella. Everything's paid for. You just need to get yourself to America. So that was an interesting experience. So I saw LA. LA is a bit wanky. Yeah, girls would come up to me and they'd be like, hey, so what do you do? And I was like, oh, I'm a personal trainer. And they were like, oh, that's cute. And then just leave. And then I was like, okay, bye.
Yeah.
I've been to New York.
I bet if you would have said, I've got like 1 million people on Instagram that like me, they're like, oh, really?
You should have said that, actually. By the way, your accent was perfect. The way you kind of.
I really like Texas. I like the big trucks, big roads. Your petrol is so cheap, like so cheap. And then the brisket, the food.
Yeah.
But the thing that throws me, right? Our police in the UK don't have guns.
The guns. It's always the guns.
So
everybody's got a gun in Texas, don't they?
I mean, everybody's got a gun in Texas.
So if I see a police officer with a gun, I'm like, oh, there's terrorists about. You know, someone's getting shot. You know,
Yeah.
But then our police in the UK that do have guns are so well trained, you never feel unsafe. And there's been some terrorist attacks in London where I think the response time, the armed police have been there in 2 minutes, or like even less than a minute, like to sort things out. So it's not like we're not protected.
Right.
So I go into my friend's house. There's a guy there called Jordan Syatt. He's in Dallas. He's like a blue belt in jiu-jitsu, fitness guy, used to train Gary Vee. And I say to him, I'd love to go to a shooting range. So I walk into his house and, you know, we're just chatting. And then he just hands me a 9mm pistol. And I'm like, whoa, what? Whoa. And I say to him, I was like, is this loaded? He's like, yeah, man. I'm like, whoa, fucking hell. I'm not moving away. I'm moving away from the window. I'm like, I don't want people looking in and seeing that I've got a gun. He's like, bro, you can carry. I was like, shut up. He goes, yeah, I've had it on me all morning. Yeah. I was like, no way. Yeah. And then we're going into a restaurant. He puts it under the seat. Yeah. I'm like, what are you putting it under the seat for? I feel like I'm sweating even talking about it.
Uh-huh.
Great. And then we go to the gun range and the guy's like, oh, hey, he's like, you got your passport? I'm like, nah. He's like, give me a driving license. I'll be fine. So I give him a driving license. He's like, here's your goggles. Here's your earmuffs. How many rounds do you want? I would take this many. I'm there with a gun. He doesn't know that I can't shoot. I've shot a few times before, to be fair, but I could have been anyone.
Right.
And then he comes around the corner, a guy in the range, and he goes, do you want to shoot my shotgun? I was like, yeah, sure. And he goes, right. He goes, this is a half cartridge. And then he goes, this is a proper cartridge. And then I think it was green, or he pulls it out and he goes, you're not allowed to shoot these. It's illegal to shoot this in the state of Texas. So we'll shoot that last.
Yeah, right.
But like, yeah, the whole guns thing was amazing. Then I come out of there, I was like, fuck, I get the hype now.
Yeah, one of my buddies from the UK, he's the same thing. He's like, I remember him and I were talking about like the difference between like, you know, the UK and America and stuff. He's like, you guys and your damn guns and da 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 da. And then I think like one time he like was down here and he like went to the range and had a buddy like take him out and shoot. And he's like, that was fun, you know,
so much fun. It's so much fun. Like it's still like, it's been a while since I've shot a gun, but like I've got a gun that I haven't shot. It's like a 12 gauge.
You get that, is that a semi-automatic shotgun?
No, it's a Keltec KSG.
Okay.
I've never shot this thing. It's like a bullpup, so it's got like 14 rounds or something, 12 plus 1, something like that. Crazy. I've never shot this. I'm kind of a little scared to shoot because like a week after I bought it, I saw something where a guy blew his hand off using that gun. That exact gun. I was like, oh god, you know. But it's fun. It's fun.
Right,
like
you're having a bad day. You go down
that?
the range. You get yourself a few fucking rounds, a few shotgun shells. You let your steam out. And also, I quite like that. So many people carry it. The next day, I was like, oh, we're actually quite safe. We're in Dallas, and I remember seeing like some homeless guys, and they were like wandering across the street, and like, not that I'm saying homeless people are dangerous or anything like that, but I was like, oh, you know, I wonder what if they're posing a threat. And I'm like, of course they're not posing a threat. They're more worried about us. And everyone's going around town being, in America, you're also so polite because of your tipping culture. So I go into a bar, they're like, hey man, how are you? Where you from? I'm like, I'm from the UK. Oh, God damn, I love the UK. And I was like, oh, this is bloody friendly, isn't it? And I realized I got to pay him bloody 20% on everything for a tip because we don't tip in the UK.
Well, yeah, but I mean, that's also sometimes that's like, depending on like the more southern part of the United States. I mean, it's like that if you're just walking around sometimes, because like, you know, for instance, I remember going up north into different states when I was younger as a kid and going up there and like, you would just see people passing the street. And like down here, you would just, I mean, granted, Kentucky is like kind of half south. We're not quite, but the more south you go, everybody's just like, you see them. Hey, how's it going? Like you just pass and, you know, whatever, if you're sitting around, you'll all of a sudden spark up conversation with people you don't know. And you know, you're having a good conversation, whatever. You go up north and you do it, or you go to like a big city like Chicago or New York and you're like, how's it going, man? And they're kind of like, what the hell do you want?
Who the fuck are you?
Yeah, right. Like I remember I was in Chicago the first time. I was 18 years old, and I'm sitting there and I'm like looking at the guy next to me. I'm like, we're just like kind of standing there for a minute waiting in line for someone. I was like, how's it going, man? And he just kind of goes like, what do you want? Just kind of like stares at me. I was like, nothing. I just was
You're friendly like that to everybody. You talk to you like if we're somewhere for like 10 minutes, you will be striking a conversation with somebody.
But I feel like, but that's common. That's common in the South with the tipping culture too, but also common amongst just people. So, man, I'm curious, how did you get into this whole like? Because I remember like, I don't know how I ended up finding you. You were on my I found you on Instagram, and I think like you had followed me or liked something of mine, and I was like, who's this guy? And I looked, and it was like, dude's got like a bazillion followers, and I started watching some of your videos, and it was very like no nonsense information related to lifting and diet and stuff like that. I thought it was a good message. And how did you get into that world? Because you were obviously a physical trainer, and then you somehow made it into the online space afterwards, right?
So I personal trained on the gym floor for about 4 or 5 years. So I was just doing my regular sessions, all face to face at this point. And I remember going to some like business seminars, and someone finally said, okay, use social media like a interest savings account, post once a day, and in 10 years time, you'll sell a book and people will actually buy it. And I thought, oh, that's quite a good way to think about it. Actually, I was like, okay, so every day I'm going to post to answer someone's question. So someone on the gym floor would be like, I don't understand macronutrients. What's the difference between this, this, and this? I'd answer them, but then I'd go, okay, I'm going to answer that later, because if my paying client is thinking about it, 2 people potentially in the local area are also thinking about it and they're not paying me yet. And if I can almost be like a psychic and answer people's questions before they ask them, they're going to think I'm the right coach for them. And the dream for me was to have a busy diary where I always had people. I don't like walking the floor. I don't like walking around going, hey guys, how's your workout? I'm James, the personal trainer. So I didn't like that. So I was like, if I can create enough online demand to get new business, I'll be sweet. And then similar to like jiu-jitsu, when you try something that doesn't work, you try something else and then you try something else. And every time you learn your game. And I've been doing that online where I post something where, okay, let's go with something that makes people feel good. It goes okay. All right, let's post something that, guilt trips someone. Oh, it doesn't go that well. Let me come with some no nonsense, right in your face stuff about the realities of life. Boom. People are tagging their friends, sharing it. So I've been able to have my finger on the pulse of content for the last 6-7 years. And I would try things using a whiteboard. I try filming landscape, portrait, doing all of these different things like piece to camera, whatever it is. And I came to kind of realize that I've got to find a message that is probably between 2 and 3 minutes. It's relevant to the demographic, to the audience. They have a takeaway, but also there has to be a shareability factor. And I do business seminars now, and I sit with people and I go, what was the last piece of content you shared? And why did you feel compelled to share it? And they're questions people don't ask themselves in the game. And with that in mind, I started off writing blogs, and my early day blogs were like difference between sweet potato and potato, and why, there's not much difference. And then it became into video content. And then Facebook was my big platform, and Facebook still slaps. Like I've got probably 400,000 or 500,000 followers on Facebook, but I get better reach on that than I do from 900,000 on Insta.
Interesting.
Your ability to go viral on Facebook is more than it is on Instagram. So I did a couple of jiu-jitsu skits, and one of them got 54 million views on Facebook. Oh, wow. And it didn't go viral for 11 months. So 11 months after I posted it, it went viral, which is ridiculous.
That's random.
Yeah. So like someone somewhere just shared it, and it just managed to get the traction. One platform that I've not respected enough until recently is TikTok. And I still don't really value it fully as a business tool, but I think it's a volatile market. It's almost like dipping into the cryptocurrency market without losing all your savings, right? Yeah. So it's there on the side. It's volatile, it's busy, it's new, it's trendy. I'm not big in the crypto space, but that's what it is. And I think that if you're going to create content for one platform, you can put it there, and shit might pop, shit might not, but you don't have to worry about it too much. So yeah, things have just really got carried away, if I'm completely honest. The goal was maybe to get to 100,000 followers and to be busy on the gym floor. And I managed to kind of supersede that. And now I'm just pretty much making it up as I go along. I've had a couple of book deals and I do things here and there, but it's really about trying to educate people in a short period of time and giving them a compelling thing to think about. And yeah, I run a business coaching people as an online trainer. And as of yesterday, actually, I took my first ever jiu-jitsu session. So yeah, it's an interesting time.
You did what recently?
I coached a jiu-jitsu session yesterday.
Oh, you coached one. You taught one. Okay.
Online?
No, I did it in the gym. The instructor that usually did the nogi wasn't in. So
nice.
Okay.
How was that?
I loved it. I thought it was really fun. And I only really regurgitated B team stuff. No, I'm joking. But like, there were a couple things that I'd kind of thought, oh, actually, that's really helped me. So I didn't try and overcomplicate things. I didn't do like heel hooks or anything like that. I was like, hey, this is what I've done with my arm drag that's really helped. Hey, this is an armbar from the back that I've done before, and I kept it quite fun. And yeah, I enjoyed it. And I actually would like to think that in maybe 4 years' time that I would do a couple classes a week. Whenever I get a black belt, I'd love to just, do little sessions here and there at gyms. And I can actually see myself in the future doing more jiu-jitsu content, because so many times in so many gyms I've trained, and now white belts are coming up to me saying, I've started jiu-jitsu because of you. And it's done a lot for me as a person. I drink less, I party less. I'm more fixated with learning jiu-jitsu than I am anything else. And it's kind of kept me on the straight and narrow. Now, my best mate's now a 4-stripe blue belt who's winning comps. My manager is now a white belt who's out there. Some of my friends that I started recording jiu-jitsu skits with have now started jiu-jitsu as well. It's crazy that my friendship group are now, everyone's doing it. And I think it's quite important. I was thinking that if 10% of my following got into jiu-jitsu, that's also going to bolster all of the gyms around the UK, Australia, my small following in the United States. And yeah, it's actually quite an interesting ecosystem, because if I'm a personal trainer who's stepping out my lane to talk about jiu-jitsu, I'm putting white belts into gyms around the world. And it's quite crazy to see people above me being like, actually, yeah, keep doing that. Because when I was a PT putting out fitness content in the beginning, the people above me would be like, shut the fuck up. What do you know?
Yeah.
So it's kind of like a good environment to be doing that.
Yeah, it's almost like when you're going back to like steroids. It's interesting, this effect that I've seen with a lot of the students that come in over the years, where you'll get someone who's, out of shape, overweight, smoking, drinking, whatever, insert all the bad stuff, right? And then they will start training jiu-jitsu. And then they have this connection then to their body where they enjoy doing this workout. So they come in and work out often. And then they find that, well, if I drink more water, if I eat better food, if I drink less and all this stuff, all of a sudden my training's better and able to like get more arm bars. So there's this reward to us, and they start, basically improving all these other aspects of their life because of this one thing. It reminds me of what you were talking about related to steroids, where you do this thing, and because you're doing this thing, it improves all these other aspects of your life. And so you get someone that trains a lot of times, and everything else in their life changes, usually for the positive. And then the negative side to that is that if they don't know how to like keep those habits intact, if they get injured and they're not training, then a lot of those habits like fall away. I remember like after the lockdowns here in Louisville, in Kentucky, which didn't last nearly as long as a lot of the other parts of the country and the world. A lot of the guys came back from 2 months. And, some of them had gained like 20 pounds or something like that, because they couldn't train. They couldn't do the things that they were normally doing. They lost that connection to their body and the consequences of eating poor diets and everything else.
Yeah, it's one of those things where I've experienced that firsthand, where I stretch a bit more. Like I now train primarily to offset injury.
Yeah.
And then I'm starting to become, I went down a rabbit hole the other day. There's a guy called Raspberry Ape. He's a black belt.
Yeah.
And he's got the grip instructionals.
Yeah.
And I'm watching his grip instructionals and I'm thinking, I'm so weak. Like he's doing all these like strongman things. I went to the gym and I was like, I can't even hang from a chin-up bar with one arm. I was like, my jiu-jitsu is not going to be good enough unless I can get my grip up. So then I'm going down these rabbit holes of wanting to develop my grip, maybe mobility, and it's one of those things that does keep you honest. I don't want to eat fried food during the day because I've got evening training. If I'm going out for a lunch, I need to be able to move. I don't want to feel sick, because if I'm doing 8-9 rounds of sparring, I want to feel good. So yeah, the habits, the sleep, everything like that. there was a open mat at 10th Planet in Austin on a Sunday at midday. And one day I was too hungover to go roll. And I felt disgusting, because usually with a hangover, I can roll. I don't try that hard, and it's like the perfect hangover cure. I did 2 rolls, and one of the boys said, "You just walked out." I was so hungover, I walked out. And after that, I was like, that ain't good, James. You can't, if you're too hungover to roll jiu-jitsu, you're going wrong in life. So it kind of keeps you honest that way.
Yeah, it's I used to do it when I was younger a little bit. When I was like first started, I was like 26. 25, 26. I had like one instance where I was like a little hungover and I trained and I was like, I'm never doing that again. That was awful. I mean, I felt like shit. I was like sweating, like literally like a minute in, I was just sweating. And it felt horrible. And I was like, I'm never doing that. I was a white belt at the time, so I was probably getting my ass kicked anyways. But I was like, yeah, you definitely modify your life a little bit around like, all right, I want to be able to train. I want to not get my ass kicked. I want to feel good. I'm going to definitely modify what I do throughout the day, or my habits. I'm going to change those, adjust them a little bit, just so I can get some good rounds in.
One thing that's interesting is that I actually had this conversation with my mate this morning, where when I first started posting content as a PT, I was petrified about what other PTs thought.
Sure.
And now I've realized that when I post about jiu-jitsu, I'm petrified about what black belts think. I'm like, hold on, I think this is right, but I could be wrong. And I've kind of almost lost the ability that almost discussion should begin from being wrong about something, where I could actually build a relationship with someone if they come to me and go, oh, actually, the detail there would be better if you do that. Mm-hmm. And then, and I do wonder sometimes how many black belts out there are scared to post content or to be so proficient on social media because they're worried about what the black belts will think, which is ironically probably the only population of people that will never buy from them.
Yeah. Yeah. Right.
It's like being a butcher and being worried about vegetarians.
Right. Well, I mean, people are just, that's just fear, and people will, they'll insert, okay, I'm worried about the black belt. And if, there was another situation, they would insert someone else that they're worried about. That's just people's innate fears. And jiu-jitsu is such a weird thing too, because first off, there's always stuff that's changing. And really there's no one way to do it. It's like a diet. I mean, there's all kinds of diets that are out there, and pretty much use any of them and they can work if you keep them in line with your macronutrients and your output and everything else and your calories. But with jiu-jitsu, it's the same way. Like, there's not just one way to do it. Like, you can go to a gym and say you have 5 black belts in front of you. You ask them a question about a particular position or technique. You might get 5 different answers. And sometimes it's the same technique that they're showing you, but they do it slightly differently. And so sometimes it's, someone will say, well, I do it differently. I tend to whenever I hear a black belt tell me like that's wrong, but they don't but I'm like, was it wrong, or is it just that we do it differently? Because sometimes I think it's more along those lines, because you can say it's wrong, but it's worked for me for a long time. Maybe it's just that I do it a little bit differently to you because my arms are shorter and I'm a bit thicker around the torso and you're a bit thinner. And there's all those sorts of factors that play into it. So I think a lot of times most black belts to me that have been around for long enough, they may be critical of stuff, but usually it's one of those things where they're like, well, I do it differently. Not so much of it that it's wrong.
It's interesting that I still think that the social media space for jiu-jitsu hasn't even fully erupted yet. Like, it's beginning. There's some figureheads in it, but if you think about how many people have the knowledge and how many people are putting it out there, I feel like it's like the gold rush hasn't actually begun yet. Mm-hmm. And I know that you've got some figureheads like Danaher and Craig Jones and Gordon Ryan that are really, making probably big bucks through instructionals. I think that I'm convinced now that we might have more white belts in the sport than there's ever been before. And I think it's quite an exciting prospect, not only for the sport and for the people that are in it, but potentially for a lot of people that haven't even started it yet.
Yeah, but I think the issue then there goes back to the fact that just how you said you got into social media and you're putting forth work on the front end and you're like, okay, let's see if this thing pays off. I think there's an issue where sometimes we're all guilty of this, right? When we get to a place where things are comfortable and things have become easy for us. And this is true. This is true with black belts. Black belts are people too. So they get into a position where, they do this, black belts will do this sometimes with their game where maybe they stop learning stuff because they've got their style. It's working for them. This is just what they're going to do. They're not going to learn as much. Or, they've got their gym. Things are going okay. So why do I need to even worry about the social media stuff? And with the social media stuff, they're just like, you're going to be a white belt again at something. You're going to get into it. Your first videos, your first posts are probably going to suck. They're probably not going to be interesting or entertaining. But then if you keep at it for a while, something's going to come of it. And so I think that, if the people that have the interest to do that and they have that enthusiasm for sharing information like you do, will be fine at it. But I think that still there's going to be some people who are just, they might put up a post every now and then just kind of, I'm done with this. Because I mean, like when I was getting into YouTube, I remember looking around at like other jiu-jitsu channels. And when I first really started getting into mine, it was even more empty than what it is now. There really weren't a lot out there that were doing anything else other than like a technique of the week. Here's my thumbs up. And then that's the end of the video. And I remember like I found all these like ghost towns like of jiu-jitsu channels on YouTube where they would do maybe 1, 2, 3 videos and then boom, that was it. They stopped. And so I think that you're right. Jiu-jitsu is growing and even larger, and there's a lot of cool prospects for it. But I think that, you'll also have to get the guys where you're really good at being a black belt in jiu-jitsu on the mat. Now, like you're going to have to be a white belt at something again. And are you cool with doing that?
Mm-hmm.
I said, I've got in the heads of a few of the guys, Nicky Rod and Isaac, and I bring everything back to jiu-jitsu. And I say to them, if you try something only 5, 6, 10 times, I don't expect it to work. I said, what if you shot a double leg 10 times? You're going to be proficient at it? No. I said to Nicky Rod, how many did you shoot before you became very good at them? It was like probably thousands. I was like, well, you best get busy then. I was like, if you post once a day, that's 3 years. And some people don't like to hear that, but most black belts know what it takes to get to a level of mastery, but they don't like to put that lens over their marketing and online business. And for me, I feel like I've done it the other way around. In the gym yesterday, I put together a little video for YouTube just explaining what jiu-jitsu was. And someone was like, oh, how'd you get confident speaking to camera? I said, the same way you get confident at passing the guard. I did it thousands of times. And I think that if people can become comfortable with that, and I think that if there are any instructors listening to this, to see someone in their most natural environment, if they just put a camera and recorded them teaching a technique at the beginning of the class and just uploaded that's literally all it takes. And I mean, some of the best videos that you see coming out of Atos are ones from the actual class. Someone comes out, pops out a video, camcorder, boom, does it, puts it online. And if people did that, over a year, they might not get many people in their gym. Over 2 years, they might end up having a waiting list. And maybe over 3 or 4 years, they might end up having a massive online presence to educate people. And I think that I was fortunate enough to see that early on. I think that that's really the sole reason that I've got a large following, is that I did exactly that. I said, okay, I'm going to do this for years on end to see what the payback is. But we live in a world now where so many people expect gratifications from their actions very early on. And like some white belts go, I still don't get it. I'm like, that's the point. You've only been here 3 months. Like, let's talk again in a year. And people don't like to hear that.
Well, I mean, like you talk about jiu-jitsu. I mean, you can get into it for years and years and years. And then you still, like, you talk to most black belts that are, worth their salt. They're still like saying, I'm learning new stuff. I'm still getting better at this stuff, or like I've still gone to plenty of seminars and things like that. And been like, I've never seen that before, so it's like, it never ends. You just keep going. And I think that's like the issue with getting into something and having, it's fine to have expectations, but like getting too attached to those, if that makes sense. Like being willing to do something and being really enthusiastic about doing something, but not really having any sort of care as to whether or not things go great. Like you just do them and you just see what happens. It's almost like going on a date with someone. If you go on a date with a woman and you're worried, like you're so worried about what she thinks about you, I mean, she's going to sniff that out. You're being needy, but if you go in there, you're like, look, I'm here with you. I'm ready to have a good time. If you like me, great. If you don't, whatever, you'll probably be more natural. You'll have more fun with it, and it won't be such an exhausting situation.
Yeah. And I mean, and this is what I say to the people, I was like, right, just post one thing a day. That's it. Don't expect anything from it. You've got a job, you're an instructor, you've got a gym, you've got nothing to lose. And I'm saying to people, I'm asking for a 7-minute investment a day, 7 minutes. And if you put it in, the returns could be massive. They might not be, but they could be. And yeah, like you say, as long as people's expectations are in the right place, same with jiu-jitsu. You say, right, train 3 times, 4 times a week minimum. Cool. Don't think you're going to become the hardest guy in your neighborhood. Don't think you're going to become a 10-time world champion. Just turn up. And usually within years, people are way further ahead than they ever thought possible.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's the big thing is consistency. That's what you're talking about. You know, consistently post every day, right? Be on, make it part of the habit. Like the thing with jujitsu, like, you know, Chewy gets a lot of questions. You see him constantly these questions, and I see it too. Like, well, how do you get better at jujitsu? Well, you just keep showing up. You know, you show up to class. Like, it's not really. I don't want to say it's easy. It's not easy because some days you don't want to be there, and some days you're the nail, you know. But honestly, like it's that's kind of the main thing is just showing up.
I've had so many sessions where I've not wanted to go, and I'm like, oh, just go. And I get there, and I learn something, and I go, wow, I'm so glad I came today. This is going to change everything.
Yeah.
And it's so important for people that even if they go there and they have a bad session, that's completely fine. But not going is really like the halt of all progress.
Yeah. Have you ever gone to training and regretted it? Have you ever had that?
Not really. No.
Yeah,
I've had the days when I come home. I remember we had like a Friday night no-gi session. I didn't get one submission. I got in the shower. I was like, fuck. But then the next day I was like, right, let's get back into these instructionals. Let's get back into learning some more things. Let's book in a private for next week. And I was like, as long as you can turn those negative scenarios into a net positive without getting my ass handed to me, I wouldn't have booked in a session for wrestling. I wouldn't have done this. I wouldn't have done that. So yeah, it's one of those things where it's when you're winning a lot that you become weak. It's when you're rolling and subbing everyone that you go home and you're like, oh, I don't need to work on this. Don't need to do that. Oh, I don't need to go to the gym. So yeah, it's one of those things where as long as you can see the lens of failing being a great motivator, I think that's really what it's all about.
Yeah, I think you just gotta keep showing up, and I think like I've never had I would say probably I don't recall a day that I went in jiu-jitsu that was sad that I came in, or I was upset, or I felt like I wish I didn't. You know, it's always something positive or something. It's at least you got a good workout in, even though if you were getting your ass kicked the whole time, you still had you're still hanging out with your buddies. You know, you're still doing something you enjoy doing. You're getting some exercise in. I think there's nothing, as long as like, you didn't get injured, I think it's a good day.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah. I wanted to ask you, do you recall like maybe your first video that went viral like that? What was that like for you? And like, did you like when you realized like, oh shit, I might be actually able to do something with this thing?
Do you know what? I wish there was like real viral videos where things just went like, I wish there was. There are some that perform better than others. But the main thing for me was the day that I realized, okay, I'm not going to be in better shape than this guy. I'm not going to be more experienced than this guy. I'm not going to produce videos as well as this guy. And I just picked my strength, which I was like, you guys are all kind of boring. And I was like, to the main people that I looked up to in the industry, I was like, you talk for too long. Your videos aren't succinct enough. And you're not communicating the point as well as it could be. And I've realized that's my strength. And I stopped worrying about what they were good at. And I just started focusing on what I was good at. And I was like, I don't need to be the biggest or most muscular if I can communicate better. And when people can understand that, that's when really you're going to take off, because that's what caused the growth over the years. It was the understanding of that. It wasn't so much the fact that there was one video that propelled me into the heights. My growth is very slow. It's very gradual. And if I could show people over 8 years, there's barely any spikes apart from the time that Lad Bible did a piece on me. I got 80,000 followers in a week.
That's interesting. What did they do? What was that about?
They just did like an interview with me and posted it, and they were like, meet the no nonsense personal trainer. And yeah, that was crazy. I woke up and I shit you not, every time I refreshed my Instagram, there was another 1,000 followers. I was like, what's happened? We've been hacked. I'm being cancelled. I'm in the Daily Mail. Someone's come after me. And then I realized it was on Lad Bible. So that was probably that. Actually, yeah, that's probably the one time that I got an extortionate amount of traffic.
That's awesome.
What's the because I get this, and I'm sure you do. What is it like being out and about, and then some random person gives you that look where they're staring at you, and you know they're like, is that the guy that I see in my phone screen? And then they like come up and say something. What's that experience like for you?
I'm sure you've had it as well, where you're at a comp and someone's looking and you're like, am I being a fucking narcissist? Just the way they look,
Yes.
they definitely follow me. And then you're like, no, they don't. Stop being a narcissist.
Yeah,
And then they come over and they're like, hey, I love your YouTube channel. And you're like,
yeah.
I knew it. It's strange. The last 3-4 times I've competed in the pen, someone's gone, I really like your podcast. And I'm like, for fuck's sake, like I'm trying to get in the mode to kill you.
Yeah.
And you're there complimenting me. I'm like, thanks, man. It's really nice. Where are you from? And then you get into a nice conversation with them before.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's very surreal. It's very weird. I mean, I was 27 when I first got asked for a selfie. So
Nice.
it like 85% of my life that never happened. Never.
Mhm.
So it's quite a weird thing still. It's weird that we did a jiu-jitsu skit video where I walk down the street and someone tries to mug me and I take my
Mhm.
jacket off and I've got a purple belt on. I'm like, lads, you don't want this smoke. And I went to a jiu-jitsu tournament in London. Every other person was like, oh, I loved your video. Black belts, people coming straight off the mats, even people about to compete. They're like, oh, hey, James, I loved your video. And I've had it before where someone's had a selfie with me and someone's looked and I'm like, don't worry. It's not because I'm good at jiu-jitsu. I'm at a tournament. I'm like, it's not for my jiu-jitsu skills. Don't worry, bro. In case they were like, oh, is this some guy, some like big time jiu-jitsu?
Should I know about this guy?
Yeah. I was like, there's some black belt. I'm like, don't worry, mate. I've just posted funny videos. He's like, okay.
Yeah, that's funny. That the narcissist part's funny. Like I remember, like when I go to competitions, it's like it's this thing where like I've got to kind of prepare for it because it's like like I'm kind of naturally an introvert to some degree. Like I'm an extrovert in the things that I do, but like I kind of go inward to recharge. And so like when I go there to tournaments, I mean, it's like people coming up, which is I'm happy that people give a shit about what I'm doing. So I have no problem with it. It's fun. I have like a rule where I put, if my headphones are on, I'm like, I'm not talking, I'm getting ready for the competition. So I got to zone in and get ready. But I remember there was this one woman at a competition where, you know, I just got done going through all these different people, taking selfies, chatting with people for a few minutes. And then this woman, like, she was just kind of staring at me. And I was like, hey, did you want to get a picture or whatever? And she looked at me, she's like, no, I don't want to get a picture with you. I'm like, oh, well, of course. I'm sorry about that one, you know? I just assumed now that everybody stares at me. I know, right? Anybody that stares at me wants to get a picture.
It's now I'm trying to get in a position where I've entered a competition soon, but not in Sydney where I live because it's too much. I want to go to different places in Australia and just turn up in little towns and do comps there. So I've got one in a few weeks' time or in a month's time. And even the last comp I went to, 2 of the people out of 3 that I fought followed me. And I was like, but I didn't know till after. So then afterwards, we're like on the podium and they're like, oh, can you get a picture? He follows you from his like dad or something. I was like, what the fuck? Like, nice. I now never know. And it is weird when people kind of look at you a bit weird. I can also tell now someone will come to the gym and I'll roll with them. And I can tell from how hard they go, whether they follow me or not, because I feel now people want to scalp me. They want to get, oh yeah, I fucking tap the fuck out of James when I rolled with him. I can sense that, which is a really big motivator for training more. Because now when some guys sent me some jiu-jitsu kit and they turn up to the gym to roll in the UK, I knew they wanted the smoke. So then when I have to go hard because I can't have rumors going around that I shouldn't be a purple belt or that I'm shit or something like that.
Right.
So now I love that. I love the pressure. Like I now say to people like, oh, if you want to come to the gym and have a roll, let's do it. And I might lose, but I want to make sure that at least I have a good reputation because everyone, I think there's a lot of people now near the 1 million follower mark who've been given their belts ceremoniously.
Right.
And I never want that. I never want someone to go, oh, James has got a big Insta following, let's promote him. Or let's do that. I hate that shit. Like, so for me, I'm always ready for the scalp takers.
Do you think that they're trying to scalp you, or is it one of those things where maybe they follow you, maybe they're really into your stuff and they're like almost nervous? Because I get that sometimes. Like, like some people will come in, they're like, dude, I love all your videos, da da da. And when we roll, there's almost this like initial moment where their body's very tense. And then after we move a little bit, they tend to like, it turns into that normal pace of rolling where you can go hard, but you all of us that have rolled long enough, you can tell when someone's really like gritting into something and they're grunting and stuff, like where they're going really hard versus like I said, a little bit nervous? Do you think it's like, so do you think there's maybe a little bit nervousness because they like you, or do you think it's just straight up they're trying to scalp you and be like, I beat the dude with a bunch of followers?
I like to think I'm a good judge of character with this, because there are those people where I go, hey, I'm James, and they go, I know who you are, and I'm like, okay, cool, and we have like fun roles. And I love those ones where, you know, I try and pull some bullshit off or have a bit of fun, or if they take me down, I'm like, hey, 2 points, like having fun with it. But then I'll never forget rolling in London, just getting my blue belt and a black belt dropping as hard as he could into a wrist lock. It was the first time I've ever yelped. And afterwards, I was like, bro, he mounted me at this point. It was a wrist lock from Mount. I was like, I've just got my blue belt. We're training. This is a fun environment. You nearly just broke my wrist in front of everyone. And I could tell he liked the fact I yelped. And then he did it again in the next roll. And I'm like, bro, the guy's 115 kg. I was like, what are you trying to prove? And then I was in a position where I didn't want to go to the gym because I knew the black belt was going to call me out and try and break my wrist every time. So there are some times where it's like that, but I'd say 70% of the time, people are very friendly. They follow, they want to come along. We have like a really good time. But there's that 30% of the time where I feel that some people are, they're looking to get a heel hook, or they're looking to get something. They might be plant-based, and I might have taken the piss out of vegans a couple of times. So there are those times as well. But to be fair, I welcome all of it, because you can't try and build a big profile without some people wanting to get you. But yeah, the majority of them are all great interactions. But it's crazy. Even Jordan, the guy who handed me the 9mm, he found people shit talking about him online, saying like, oh, is he even supposed to be a blue belt? Oh, he's competing at this comp. Oh, he's not even that good. And then the same people that were chatting shit about him were like, oh, I met him at a competition today. He's actually really nice. And he won his category, so he must be. So yeah, it's one of those things where I just never want to be bundled into those. Like, I've never seen them roll, but like Russell Brand got his purple belt. Jonah Hill, I think, is a blue belt. Tom Hardy is a blue belt. He trains at a gym near me in London. But I don't feel those, not saying that I'm on their level, I don't see those people like going to comps or doing comp classes or doing spars with everyone. And even yesterday, I was like, I always want to roll with everyone. Every time I'm training, I'd love to do that. And if I ever did a seminar in a few years' time, I'd definitely be the guy that spars with everyone before they leave.
Yeah, there's something to like, for like people that do jiu-jitsu, there's very much something to knowing that the person, one, they like put their face to the grinder just like to the rest of us, where sometimes you're like those celebrities, you're like, did they really get it? Did they actually roll? Did they get their ass kicked? You know, did they go through all the stuff that you're supposed to go through to get it, or did they just kind of do some private lessons and they paid enough money to get it? You know, because there's something to that about the person's character that shows through being willing to put yourself in really uncomfortable situations and rolling with whomever. And that's even an interesting thing as far as being like, you know, I guess like a sort of a new, this new media celebrity thing that's going on now, where, you know, before, you know, like just like we were talking about how you couldn't roll with like Michael Jordan, or go play basketball with Michael Jordan, or, you know, go throw the football with Tom Brady. We're now in the situation where like a lot of young people, the celebrities that they follow or that they follow the most are these people in like, you know, Instagram and social media and stuff. So it's interesting that you have this situation where like, okay, like you're still a regular guy, but you have this level of celebrity, and I could go try to kick this celebrity's ass in person if I wanted to. That's an interesting thing, because it's like you've never had that before. Like, you know, like if you saw a movie with like Harrison Ford 30 years ago, you couldn't go like try to fight him or something, you know, like, you know, you didn't get a chance to do it, but it's like
accessible.
Now, right? There's inaccessible. It's right.
And even yesterday, I said to people, come to the class. Even if you've never trained here before, come along. And anyone that wanted to could have come. I say to people, come, like, you know, my gym is that I train at, come along.
Yeah. It's like the thing, Chewy, you were talking about like your first black belt tournament, I think in New York, and you were like in the bullpen, you see all these guys that you've kind of, you know, that were in, maybe even in your division.
This was in Miami. Yeah.
It was in Miami.
Yeah.
But like you see these guys that, like, as jiu-jitsu practitioners we look up to, or we've watched their videos, their techniques, their legends, and like you're in the bullpen with them.
Yeah,
you're warming up. Yeah, you might even roll with them. It's crazy. I mean, it's the accessibility there. You can compete against the best in the world.
The best thing for me in the last year is I managed to roll with Craig Jones, Nicky Rod, Nicky Ryan, Braulio Estima, and Hodger Gracie. And like, who the hell gets to have a year with rolling against those people.
Mm.
Now, Hodger even posted our roll. When I first turned up to Hodger Gracie's gym, I know he's 10 times world champion and greatest of all time. That's the only time I've ever felt like quitting jiu-jitsu, was when he had the scaffold. And I can't explain to people how unpleasant it was, because the physics don't dictate how I felt. He's probably 105 kg. It's scaffold. It's chest pressure. I've never felt anything like it. And in that point, I didn't want to train. I didn't want to be there. I still am haunted by how I felt. He let go of the position. He wouldn't let me tap from it. He said, James, there's no tap here. And I was like, oh. Afterwards, I felt violated, right? That's probably one of the only times. And I was like, that wasn't fun. He let go. And I said, thanks. Middle of a roll. I was like, thank you. Looked at Roger Gracie in the eyes. I was like, thank you so much for letting go of that. But yeah, rolling with these people, you know, Braulio's team are very fun, playful rolls. You know, Craig Jones is like a stick insect, right? The crazy stick insect that taps you with moves that I didn't even know existed. And yeah, it's such a pleasure for me. Even I feel like I'm rolling with celebrities there.
Yeah.
And I feel like I'm incredibly fortunate to do that. I feel like some people go to Austin, they don't need to try the brisket. I'm like, no, you need to try rolling with this stick insect called Craig Jones. So yeah, it's one of those things where you don't forget that someone's giving you the time, 5 minutes. And even if you get your ass handed to you, it's like a privilege. It's like something kind of, oh, this guy's cool. Oh yeah, I rolled with him.
Is there something you've done, like as far as your training outside of jiu-jitsu, you know, being a personal trainer, someone that's very knowledgeable at the gym? How have you maybe adjusted your lifting or your like your training to supplement your jiu-jitsu, or maybe even fight off or prevent injuries?
Doing a lot less, which sounds really crazy, but some of the workouts I do now, I don't do more than 12 sets of exercises, maybe 15 at a push. And now I'll only do maybe 3 sets per body part, which from a bodybuilder background is insufficient volume. But now I can't train more than 45 minutes of weights and sustain jiu-jitsu at the same time. And it's been very difficult for me to only allocate 3 sets to a body part and then to say, right, that's it. That's it. And also I'm now having to really track what I'm lifting to make sure that I'm not going off and biting off too much. So I do the workout, I look at the training program, I train jiu-jitsu, then I see how I feel the next day. And if I'm a train wreck, I'm like, well, I can't control the sparring, but I can control, I think you can control the sparring a bit, but I need to control the weights. If I've got really bad DOMs, I need to bring that down or bring the intensity down, because ultimately I'm better off waking up the next day understimulated than I am overworked. So doing less for me is one that's really been quite difficult, and understanding when sometimes I'm better off going for a swim than I'm hitting weights, and other times that maybe with my sparring to not be quite so ego orientated, to go to training and just be like, hey, I'm going to be a fantastic uke for my training partners. I'm not going to work that hard today. And if I get banged arm bars on me or leg locks, that's fine. At least it'll benefit my training partners. So I always go with that. I don't always have to go to training to win, because my value set isn't around being a world champion. It's about enjoying it. And if I set my sights too seriously, then I'm going to lose sight of that.
What kind of lifting are you doing? Like, is there specific lifts that you incorporate for jiu-jitsu, or a certain exercise that you like that feel like supplement jiu-jitsu really well?
Quite simply, squat, deadlift. And so I split my training into squat, pull vertical, pull horizontal, and biceps. And then deadlift, push vertical, push horizontal, and triceps. And then the third day is just an accessory day where I'll do some max time hangs from a chin-up bar for grips. I'll do some like kind of row variations. I actually do a little bit of calf work. My ankles are the most injured joint in my body. They're also the least trained. So I'm going through this theory now that maybe if I can develop strong ankles, I can maybe develop potentially, you know, stronger resistance to heel hooks, footlocks, things like that. Still trying to figure that out. But there's nothing crazy in that plan. And there's almost nothing jiu-jitsu specific, because I like to keep jiu-jitsu specific stuff in jiu-jitsu. Like for some people might go, oh, hip thrusts are amazing for jiu-jitsu. Sure. I think that maybe putting a resistance band around someone's waist and getting them to shoot 30 doubles in a minute might be more you know, kind of transferable. So I'm still trying to figure it out. I've been training 4 years. I think a lot of people try and overcomplicate it very early on. My next set of programming, I'm going to do split squats, which I think might transfer into wrestling a bit more. But it's to be figured out. I'm there trying to figure it all out as I'm going along.
Yeah, well, and if you try to mimic the movements from jiu-jitsu in the weight room, I think you're going to lead into an issue with like overloading those patterns and those muscles, because we use them so much. Like, so, you know, like, I mean, I'm sure you go into a gym and you look around at people's bodies and you're like, well, he's got terrible posture. His hips have no extension, you know, like, because they're constantly in flexion, and it leads to a lot of back issues, a lot of neck issues and stuff like that. So getting people to like do upper back work and do some just straight up pulling and hip extension exercises, which you can obviously get done with like deadlifts and squats and rows and everything else. I think building a strong body is probably a better bet than trying to mimic the movements and develop those muscles that are already being used every day when we go on the mats.
Yeah, 100%. And also, there's an interesting thing I heard on Danaher say recently on a podcast where he goes, it's very difficult on the mats to determine someone who can bench 300 pounds or someone that can bench 400 pounds.
Right.
That's a staggering difference in the world of weightlifting, but in jiu-jitsu, it's negligible.
Yeah.
And yes, once someone's strong to a certain degree, cool, you're done. Get someone to squat their body weight, deadlift their body weight, do 10 chin-ups. You're probably now strong enough to be injury or do the most of injury-free protection. But then, like you say, face pulls, posterior chain stuff, all of these things, it then becomes like injury prevention. Or if you're someone that loves arm bars, you're going to develop your hamstrings, you're going to develop laying hamstring curl, seated hamstring curl. So then all of these things can start playing into people's games. That Raspberry Ape, he's going to be a grip monster. You know, if you're someone who, one thing now I'm starting to find that grapplers are starting to get some elbow issues, tendonitis. I've got a savage click on my right elbow now, golfer's elbow, like tennis elbow. Yeah. So now I want to make sure that I'm starting to understand these things a bit more. Because once people get the jiu-jitsu bug, it's very difficult for them to dial back on their training.
Yeah, I think like so I'm my background is a physical therapist, so like a lot of the stuff that I started going into is specific joint training. Have you ever heard of like functional range conditioning, like controlled articular rotations, like joint circles?
I've not actually.
So like functional range conditioning kind of goes into these joint circles, basically increasing the capacity of the movement. And then you work on some end range isometrics. So like, you know, you're looking at maybe if you're training like prevention for heel hooks and things like that, you want to work on obviously hip and knee mobility and also ankle mobility and strengthening at end ranges. So doing isometric holds at those end range positions in a controlled way. You're not obviously going to go 100%, but you're going to start really low and start to build up some resiliency there. So you have good capacity of movement, and actually good control of those end ranges where most injuries occur. So that's going to be like something like, that's not even specific, you know, weightlifting. You're doing body weight stuff or just putting your limbs in like end range positions, trying to hold against gravity. So it's something that I've used and I actually implement a lot with people at the gym that I feel like is extremely beneficial in improving like range of motion, also transferable to jiu-jitsu, because most of those injuries occur when like the tension is all the way maxed out on a joint, right? And that's when it fails. So if you can strengthen a little bit there and even build some resiliency there, it might give you that half second to tap, you know, so you don't injure your tear your ligaments or something like that.
Yeah, that's it. I've definitely got into trying to mobilize a lot more with my hips, especially external rotation. When I see people throwing in these like K guards and like all of these whipping their legs around, I'm like, how the hell would you get your legs around like that? And people, when they play rubber guard, it cringes me out. I'm like, my knee is feeling that just watching you guys do it, the super mobile guys. And now I've become the police and people sitting up in 50-50. People say, I'm like, whoa, stop. I popped my knee once. It wasn't bad. It was like just the, I can't remember, anterior. There's the tib fib joint just up on the top outside part of the knee, the little bony bit on the outside. You'll know it better than me. I was limping for like a week. It wasn't bad. It wasn't ligaments. It wasn't meniscus. But now whenever I see people sit up in 50-50, I'm there in the gym. Even if it's not my role, I'm like, you two stop now. I'm like, this is not good for the knee. Just get back
Jiu-Jitsu is not good for the knees, man. Yeah. Any way you slice it, even you can do all this. It's just not like
good for anything.
Like, I mean, my
we're
knees,
just tugging on our joints.
Like the whole point of jiu-jitsu is to like take your joint and put it into like an end range or move it in a way it's not supposed to move, choke somebody. So I think it's just one of those things where if you can limit that, like even tapping early on or being aware of when you're in trouble kind of thing, that's very helpful as well. Cause sometimes people will just like try to eat it. What was that video of that Naga? Is that
the poor guy that
guy was like, with
Did you
the
see that
Kimura?
with that guy with the Kimura?
That's a humorous break, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's like probably a spiral fracture.
Yeah.
So like it sucks. I think it's the same, maybe the same that Nogueira had.
Yeah, Nogueira had one.
Yeah, and like it's just that torque. You think of the bone, right? I mean, it's strong this way, but like twisting wise, it's a long bone. It's not going to be as resilient. And all that torque on it. I mean, it's probably a better scenario than like the rotator cuff being completely obliterated, but it's still not good.
This is what I said. I said that if you had a choice of a bone, even a spiral fracture, or your shoulder joint being blown out, part of me was like, at least with the bone, they can nail it together, put some screws, put a plate in there. The joint might be fine. But yesterday, I had a bit of trauma. I had to see that in the morning. Then a video, a swimmer got eaten by a great white yesterday in Sydney, about 20 minutes from here. So a 4.5 meter great white got him.
Oh my God.
And there's a video of a guy filming it. It's all around Twitter. And I was saying to my friends, I was like, guys, you got to stop WhatsApping me stuff. I've seen someone's arm break in jiu-jitsu, which I do every day. And also I swim in the sea every day. And just showing me a guy getting eaten by a great white. I was like, I've got to exit out of some of these group chats.
I'm not going anywhere. Just stay home the whole time.
Well, and it's like those things are like so rare. They rarely ever happen. But the fact that you saw them now, it's like, oh man, I don't know if I want to go out for the swim now.
So as soon as someone sets up a Kimura, take it, tap, let me out.
And by the way, if you figure out how to bulletproof your ankles from ankle locks, let me know. That's like, out of all my body parts, like that is like literally my Achilles heel. I mean, it's like, it's the thing that like, granted I can stay out of leg locks, I can play with heel hooks, but like just a good old fashioned like straight ankle lock or calf slice or any of that stuff. I've got bitch ankles. They're just like, they're kind of thin. I have big calves, but the ankles are kind of thin and man, it hurts.
Yeah, this is it. I was saying people that are scared about heel hooks, I'd be like, you need to be scared about a belly down footlock. Like that's why I think when someone turns, I'm like, whoa, give me my foot back. With a heel hook, I'm like, yeah, this is okay. I understand the mechanics.
Right.
But nothing goes on so hard. And there's always that one guy in your gym that's just got the sweet footlock. And when you find that guy, I'd rather he heel hook me than I'd get a footlock. And I'm limping the next day.
Yeah.
He was like, you're all right. I'm like, oh, it's fucking footlock. And you feel like tap into a heel hook is fine, but tap into a footlock's being a bitch.
Yeah, because I can tap to a heel hook. And like you said, you understand the mechanics, so they don't rip it, and you know that you're caught. You tap, and that's that. No big deal. But then you'll get caught in that ankle lock, and a lot of times, guys will be more apt to put a little bit more oomph into it, and so they'll start to really sit back and put pressure into it, and that digs right into that muscle or down at the lower part of the foot. And either way, like you said, then next day you're like kind of like walking around funny, and you feel it. And so I'd rather get a heel hook than like have a nasty ankle lock.
Yeah,
I agree with that.
It's the mechanics. Obviously, you're attacking different areas, but sometimes just the pressure of the forearm into that bone, because there's not a lot of meaty tissue there. It's very thin. The bone's kind of close to the skin there, and it just hurts like hell. Because some people can eat those. Some people can literally like sit there in a foot lock. It can just take it, and some
you ever roll with Mark? He's got floppy feet.
Oh yeah.
You put him in a straight ankle lock. He's like, it just.
I put Mark. Me and Mark were rolling. He's a black belt at our gym. It was one of the first times we rolled. I put him like in a toe hold or something. Yeah. And I was like, he's not tapping. And then he grabbed my shit and popped it.
Yeah.
And I was like, whoa. It was crazy because I was putting like the pressure that I would normally put on someone to expect a reaction. He wasn't reacting at all. And then you told me afterwards, I was like, damn it. Yeah, some people are like impervious to it. They're just like, oh, go ahead, do whatever. But yeah, I learned my lesson that way. I got my ankle popped. It sucked. And if people, James, if people want to follow you, get some training with you, all that fun stuff, your social media, where's the best place for them to kind of get in contact with you?
My parents had one job to give me a name, right? And they chose James Smith. So because of that, I had to put PT after my name. So if they type in James Smith PT on any social media platform, they'll find me. And if they like what I have to say, maybe they'll end up in the academy, maybe they'll end up here, maybe they'll buy a book, but ultimately just check me out, see if you like what I do. And if you don't, that's also okay. And
if you don't, you can go to his academy and try to roll with him and take his head off.
Exactly. As long as no foot locks, you'll be fine.
Are you planning on coming to the States anytime?
For the time being, trying to wait to see if I can get my residency in Australia. And when I'm a bit more settled here, then I'll be coming back over. I want to check out Nashville. I want to come to Kentucky. I want to see some of the deep South as well. I want to really like see that part of America. But when I come by, I'll come through 100%. I'll bring my gear, my no-gi stuff.
Let's do it.
How did you guys meet actually in person? No? Okay.
Not yet.
I was wondering.
Not yet.
I didn't know how you guys got in contact with each other. I was curious.
I think just Instagram, interwebs.
Look at that. Bringing people together. Isn't that fun?
Thank you very much for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah, brother. Thanks. All right, guys. So hope you enjoyed the podcast with James. He's a fun guest. Definitely check him out on Instagram or Facebook or wherever you consume your social media. I like his videos where he gets in and talks about stuff, and he's a pretty entertaining and funny guy. As I'm sure you got the idea from the podcast.
Yeah, he says fun words in funny ways. Bullshit
to us.
Is that good?
To us.
I know he said some stuff during the podcast. Like what? And then he got like explained it. I was like, I get it. But
we like whenever I've been around like British friends, it's like the most fun thing to hear them like talk. Cause like they, it's interesting that like when you look at the amount of space that the UK inhabits, right, landmass, and how many different accents there are in such a small amount of space, it's kind of interesting because like when you think about like in the country, you have some different accents and stuff like that, but they don't change so rapidly. I mean, they do to some degree. Like if you, like, for instance, we're in Louisville, we sound some way.
Yeah.
If you go like a couple hours south, people might speak a little bit more country. Or south, you go an hour south. I mean, my fiance, her family's, from, just a little county across, and like she'll go hang out with them, and she'll come back saying like "worsh" and kind of has a little twang to it.
That's right.
But yeah, I love having like British people, like when they just talk and they're like their slang and they're and they're just the stuff that they say. It's fun. It tickles us as Americans.
It does. I'm sure we tickle them as well.
Yeah, I'm sure they're like what? My favorite one is like if you say like an American will say aluminum.
Aluminum, okay.
Aluminum, but they're right on this one. That's not what it is. It's aluminium. Like when you look at it, there's an I that we just completely forgot about.
Oh boy.
Like when you actually look at the word, like it's aluminium. There's it's not that there's a NIUM.
Is there?
Yes. Like here, look, I'll show you. Because I remember,
I don't know.
I'm telling you, bro.
Oh boy.
Because me and this British guy, we were going back and forth, and like he's like,
this is intense.
He was making fun of me. He goes, "You mean aluminum?"
Oh boy.
So yeah, aluminium, right?
Let me see this. I don't believe you. I don't believe this.
But what's funny is, but
where's aluminum? See it. It's aluminum.
No, but that's just because that's what we say.
The form aluminum is in common use in the United States. The form aluminium is used in Great Britain and by some chemists in the United States. All right.
It's probably like the metric system. It's like,
well, he was talking about kilograms or kilos the whole time. I'm like, how many pounds is that? I'm over doing conversions in my head.
Yeah. So he's like getting close to around 200 pounds.
Yeah.
A little over 200 pounds. But so it's like, with the metric system, it's like everybody else uses it. Us, no, we're still imperial units. Yeah. So it's like everybody else uses aluminium. America, aluminum. So,
inches.
But yeah, but I remember he would mess with me about it. So guys, hope you enjoyed the podcast. Again, big thanks to the sponsors, Charlotte's Web, charlottesweb.com. Promo code is Jujitsu20 now. Check it out. Try it out for a month. See how it affects you. Again, if you've never tried it before, I urge you to try it because of the benefits that I've gotten from it. A lot of my students have gotten from it. And so it's a cool product to share. It's like Jiu-Jitsu. It's like one of those things where your buddies get you into Jiu-Jitsu because it's a cool thing that's impacted them in a good way. And so it's the same way with CBD for me. It's been a great supplement. Also, check out Epic Roll. If you're looking for some gear or Jiu-Jitsu like t-shirts or merch or anything like that, you can go to epicrollbjj.com. The promo code is Jiu-Jitsu for 15% off. If you want to support the podcast directly, you can go to our Patreon, patreon.com/the Jiu-Jitsu podcast. And also forgot one, guys. Thanks to our sponsor, Manscaped. You can check them out by going to manscaped.com. The promo code is Jujitsu20 for 20% off plus free shipping off any of the men's grooming products that you order on there. And then last but not least, if you want to join my True Crew email list, you can do so by going to jujitsu.net/join, JOIN, and you can get my daily email along with the 3 free ebooks that come out. Messed up free a little bit. Can't speak today. Guys, thanks for joining the podcast. See you next week.